My name is Richard Harrison. I'm 74 years old. To most people, I look like an ordinary retired man. I drive an old pickup truck. I wear the same brown jacket I've owned for nearly 15 years. My watch costs less than a family dinner. People often assume that's all there is to me. And I let them. Because after a lifetime of making difficult decisions inside the highest courtroom in the country, I learned something. The truth about a person's character only appears when they think you have nothing to offer. My daughter Emily married Daniel 4 years ago. At first, Daniel treated me with respect. But after retirement, everything changed. Without my title. Without the expensive suits. Without government security following me around. I became invisible. He never asked about my life. Never cared what I had done. To him, I was simply an old man living on a modest pension. Whenever we met, he couldn't hide the disappointment in his eyes. Emily noticed it too. "Dad, don't take it personally," she whispered one afternoon. "Daniel just thinks success means flashy cars and expensive homes." I smiled. "I've seen far worse people than that in my courtroom." She laughed. But behind her smile was worry. A week before Christmas, Daniel called. "Dad, we'd love for you to join us for Christmas dinner." His voice sounded unusually cheerful. Then he added something strange. "My parents will be there too." I accepted. Not because I wanted a holiday dinner. Because experience told me something important was about to happen. Christmas evening arrived. I purposely wore my oldest coat. Its sleeves were slightly faded. The buttons didn't match anymore. My boots had scratches from years of walking courthouse steps. When Daniel opened the door, his smile disappeared for just a second. "You came dressed like that?" I looked down. "It's comfortable." He forced another smile. "Well, come in." Inside the house, everything looked expensive. Crystal decorations. Imported wine. Designer furniture. Daniel wanted everyone to notice. Especially me. His father, Michael, stood near the fireplace. Unlike Daniel, he didn't judge me. He walked over, shook my hand firmly, and smiled. "It's an honor to finally meet you, Richard." Something about his eyes caught my attention. They weren't curious. They were careful. Like he already knew something. Dinner began. Daniel spent the evening talking about money. His newest investment. His luxury vacation. His expensive watch. Every sentence sounded like a competition. Eventually he looked directly at me. "So Richard, what exactly do retired people do all day?" Emily immediately looked uncomfortable. I answered calmly. "I read. I volunteer. I enjoy quiet mornings." Daniel laughed. "No offense, but I'd go crazy living like that." His mother giggled politely. Emily stayed silent. Then Daniel added another sentence. "I always tell Emily that people should leave something important behind. Not everyone gets remembered." I nodded slowly. "That's true. Some people leave buildings. Others leave justice." He didn't understand. Michael did. His eyes never left mine. Dessert arrived. The room grew quieter. Then Michael reached inside his leather briefcase. He removed a thick sealed envelope. Without saying a word, he slid it across the dining table. Straight toward me. Daniel looked confused. "Dad, what's that?" Michael ignored him. I picked up the envelope. My name was written across the front. In handwriting I recognized immediately. 30 years ago. I had signed one final decision before retiring from the Supreme Court. One case. One family. One young lawyer. The lawyer's name was Michael Carter. I slowly opened the envelope. Inside was a yellowed newspaper clipping. The headline read, "Judge Richard Harrison saves innocent father from life sentence." Underneath lay an old photograph. Michael, 30 years younger, standing beside his wife, holding their little boy, Daniel. My daughter stared at the picture. "Wait. Dad. What is this?" Michael finally spoke. His voice shook. "Daniel. The man you've been trying to impress all evening. Saved this family before you were old enough to remember." The room fell silent. Daniel stared at me, unable to breathe. Michael continued. "When I was 29, I was falsely accused of financial fraud. I lost everything. My reputation. My career. My friends. Every judge believed I was guilty. Except one. He looked directly at me. Richard Harrison. He refused political pressure. He ignored public opinion. He studied every piece of evidence himself. And because of that, I walked out a free man." Emily slowly covered her mouth. Daniel whispered, "You never told us." I smiled softly. "You never asked." The silence that followed felt heavier than anything I'd experienced in years. For the first time, Daniel wasn't looking at an old man. He was looking at the man whose courage had given his own father a second chance. And he realized. He had spent 4 years judging someone whose greatest achievements could never be measured by money. Daniel looked down at the newspaper clipping again. His hands were trembling. "I don't understand. You were a Supreme Court judge." I nodded. "For 21 years. And before that, I served on lower courts for another 18. The room was silent. Only the crackling sound from the fireplace could be heard. Daniel slowly leaned back in his chair. "But, why didn't Emily ever tell me?" Emily looked at him with tired eyes. "Because Dad never wanted his title to define him. He always said respect earned through fear disappears the moment the title is gone." Michael smiled. "He told me the same thing 30 years ago." Daniel couldn't look at anyone. His confidence had vanished. Michael carefully unfolded another document from the envelope. "This isn't the only reason I asked Richard to come tonight." Everyone looked at him. "I've carried this letter for 3 decades. He handed it to me. The paper had faded with age. I recognized it instantly. It was a handwritten note I had sent him after the trial. It read, "Justice is never about winning. It is about protecting the truth, even when standing alone becomes expensive." Michael carefully folded it again. "I've read those words every Christmas. They reminded me to become the kind of father my son deserved." He paused. "Somehow, I failed." Daniel's head snapped upward. "Dad." Michael raised his hand. "No. You judged a man by his coat. You measured him by his truck. You assumed kindness belonged only to people with empty bank accounts. I didn't raise you that way." Daniel's face turned red. Emily quietly wiped away tears. I spoke softly. "Michael. Don't blame yourself. We all make mistakes. The important question is whether we learn from them." Daniel finally found the courage to speak. "I'm sorry." The words barely escaped his lips. "I treated you like you didn't matter. I thought success meant money. I thought retirement meant your best years were behind you." I smiled. "My best years weren't the years people applauded me. They were the years I went home knowing an innocent person could hug their family again." Michael nodded. "That's exactly what he gave me." He reached into his wallet. From behind a credit card, he removed an old photograph. The corners were worn from years of being carried. It showed him holding little Daniel outside the courthouse. I took this picture the day Richard cleared my name. I promised myself I'd never forget the man who gave my son his father back. Daniel stared at the photograph. His eyes filled with tears. I don't even remember that day. Michael answered quietly. You weren't supposed to. Children shouldn't remember courtrooms. They should remember birthdays. Christmas mornings. Baseball games. Richard made sure you had those memories instead. The room became completely silent. Daniel stood up. Without saying another word. He walked around the table. He stopped beside my chair. Then, to everyone's surprise, he knelt beside me. I'm ashamed. I spent years trying to impress people. But the man I should have admired most was sitting right in front of me. I placed a hand on his shoulder. Stand up. He hesitated. I said stand up. He slowly rose. A person doesn't earn forgiveness by kneeling. They earn it by changing. He nodded. I will. I promise. Christmas dinner ended differently than anyone expected. No one talked about investments. No one mentioned expensive watches. Instead, Michael and I spent hours telling stories from the old courtroom. Emily laughed harder than she had in years. Daniel listened to every word. Not once did he interrupt. When it was time to leave, Daniel picked up my old coat. He carefully helped me put it on. Then he noticed the worn sleeve. I used to think this coat made you look poor. He smiled through watery eyes. Now I think it's the finest coat I've ever seen. I chuckled. It's still just an old coat. No, he replied. It's a reminder. A reminder that greatness rarely announces itself. As I walked toward my truck, snow began falling. Daniel stopped me. There is one more thing. I turned around. I've been offered a partnership at my firm. More money than I've ever imagined. He looked down before continuing. I accepted it because I wanted people to admire me. He took a deep breath. Tomorrow morning. I'm turning it down. I frowned. Don't make decisions because of guilt. He smiled. I'm not. I'm making it because for the first time, I know what success actually looks like. Months later, Daniel started volunteering at a legal aid center, helping families who couldn't afford lawyers. He never told anyone why. He didn't need to. Real character doesn't ask for applause. It quietly changes lives. And every Christmas after that, Michael brought the same faded envelope. Not because anyone needed proof of who I once was. But because it reminded everyone around that table of a lesson far more valuable than rank, wealth, or titles. The greatest legacy a person leaves behind is not the position they held. It is the lives they changed when no one was watching.